Hey guys, it's One Out the Tiger here, and I am bringing you a game of Headquarters on Jungle. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm actually not going to talk about the gameplay. I think the gameplay pretty much speaks for itself. I'm playing in a team full of Huppet guys, and we pretty much dominate the hell out of this team. But what I want to talk about is a conversation that I got involved in with a coworker of mine tonight. And she's 18 years old. And we got talking about school and education, to be specific. And I guess you could say I made some mistakes in my past. And it wasn't until I was about 24 years old that education really became important to me. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through the process of how I went about, discovering, why education is important to me. So when I was 18, graduated from high school, I was, faced with that question of what do you want to do with the rest of your life, which is a really daunting question to ask any 18-year-old, as if they're going to know exactly what they're going to do for the rest of their life. What courses they're going to want to study, and, I don't know, things change, people change, and it's not really a fair question to ask, I don't know, anybody sometimes. Here at 27, I still sort of find myself grappling with, what is it that I'm going to do? So, getting back on topic. I enrolled in college right out of high school, so that would have been the fall semester of 2001. And I quickly realized that it's really easy to drop a class. I mean, it's really easy to drop a class. And my parents were paying for it. And so what I did is I dropped the classes, didn't get a refund like I should have, and I sold all my books back. So I took that money and I probably bought CDs and lunch and things that I probably shouldn't have. And of course, my mom came asking for the money. Not too long after she discovered that I had dropped out, and told her I didn't have it. And so that was a learning lesson for me, because they told me that, hey, look, we're not going to be paying for your classes for you to be dropping. We want you to go, and we want you to be serious about going. So what I decided to do, and I talked to my parents about it because I was still living at home, they made a deal with me. They said, hey, look, you can either go to school full-time and you can live here for free, or you work full-time and you pay rent. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to take a semester off. And I worked full-time and I paid rent, and I just, it was one of those things where I felt great about it because I was making money, and, it wasn't that, it wasn't school. I think I was just burned out on school. Anyways, I worked a handful of jobs, after high school. I worked as a camera salesman. I worked in the mall for a couple of years doing that, and then I got tired of that job, and so I decided to change fields altogether. And I went and I worked at this Ford dealership as a parts driver. And I quickly realized that that was sort of like a go-nowhere job. And, I was looking at these guys who were in their, late 20s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s. And they've been working there for 10-plus years, 20-plus years, it seemed like. And it's not really where I wanted to be. And so what I did is I took the opportunity to go back to school. What I ended up doing is I ended up moving up to Santa Barbara, and I went to a photo school, photography school that I had wanted to go to a very long time, to Brooks Institute of Photography. And I spent 3 years there, and I really didn't have anything to show for it when I got done. And this is where the light bulb moment came for me, is I had learned a lot about myself living on my own in Santa Barbara, going to this private photography school. And when I came back home, I realized that, I wasn't going to be able to do anything with that photography education, because what I had been trained to do was not what I really loved doing. It wasn't what I loved about photography. So I went back to traditional school. And then I had this, epiphany in one of my history classes. I was watching this video, and this historian was talking about this notebook that she had found about this midwife and all the pregnancies that she had successfully taken care of, given. And I said, hey, I do that too. I like history, and I like what she enjoys. And so basically I finally, transitioned from a nothing major into a history major. And so I spent 5 semesters at a community college, and with this newfound I don't know, realization of what is it I enjoy doing, I was able to get 4 associate's degrees in 5 semesters. So I've really worked my ass off for this degree. And so this sort of brings me to the, it's sort of a lot of backstory, but it brings me to the point of this commentary, and that is that people stress, do what you want to do what you love to do, but you can't really answer that question until you really truly discover what it is you love to do. And so backtracking a little bit, I love history, but what really put me on the path to becoming a history major is because I love teaching. I coached high school baseball when I was up in Santa Barbara, and interacting with the kids and getting these guys learning something new. I just really fell in love with, disseminating information. And not only that, but just like getting them to have it stick. And so that there was all these little aspects. It's sort of like little nuggets, like little tiny pieces at a time, kind of like a Tetris game. They fit in just the right way. I'd done the coaching, I'd done the theater stuff, and then the history fell right into place, and it became a natural progression for me to go from, coaching and teaching, which would be, like public speaking, to, learning about the discipline of history and transforming that into, the career path that I'm looking at, which is teaching eventually. At least I'd love to be able to teach at a college level, because that's where I got my inspiration to teach, and I'd like to reciprocate that inspiration to somebody else. So how does this fit into 18-year-olds? For all you guys who are kind of young out there, you feel overwhelmed with what it is you want to do with your life and what it is that is expected of you. I can say this. Don't be afraid to maybe take a little time off maybe a semester. For me, it didn't work out. It promoted a lot of slacking. It wasn't until later, like I said, that I got, really found my groove in school. But what I'll say is at least take one class. Sign up and take like a history class, a math class or an English class, some of the really hard classes to knock out. But don't expect to get your light bulb moment within the first semester, not even with the first 2 semesters. You're probably going to be in school for 4, maybe 5 semesters now with the economy the way it is.
Napalm strike coming in.
Excuse me. And you shouldn't expect that gratification. And really, you just sort of have to look at yourself and realize, like, what is it that I like to do? Do you like to make videos on YouTube? Maybe you should get into video production. Do you enjoy commentating videos? Maybe you should get into radio and television. Maybe you might be a good DJ. There are all these fields out there that are, there are, I guess you could say, arts related to a certain extent. But they're not the boring 9 to 5, sitting in an office job. And that's one thing that I know that I personally want to avoid. I don't want to work in an office building. I don't want to have that 9 to 5 job where, the location is the same, the day-to-day routine is the same. So I know that about myself. So that's another thing, is you just kind of have to know yourself. So basically, just to kind of summarize everything really quick, I know I've covered a lot more about myself than I have the topic at hand that I kind of decided that I wanted to cover. But, don't feel like you have to know at the ripe age of 18 that what it is you're going to do. School sort of doesn't prepare you to answer that question, to be honest. And feel free to go, and take college classes, and don't think that you have to go in and you have to get through college within a certain amount of time. There's no timetable to college. That is the place where you're going to learn to be who you are for the rest of your life. So take the time, to be honest, and learn. Take a lot of disciplines, take a lot of different things, and try to enjoy your time as much as possible, especially while you're young, because here, like I said, I'm 27 years old, and I need to really knuckle down. I can't be in college forever. And so you guys who are young, you have an opportunity ahead of you to, I don't want to say get out in the workforce, because that's really, it's not really your goal to get out in the workforce, but you want to get to a point where you're not old, getting into the workforce at an older age, kind of like I am. I've done a lot of different things in my life, but getting to that point of working, getting work experience is very important. In the real world. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down, but like the real world, it's just sort of I haven't even entered the real world. You know, I've been having part-time jobs and all sort of stuff, and just jobs that really don't matter. But you know what? I've run out of time. This game's ended. I went 32-9. I wasn't much of a team player. I was more of a slayer in this game. I mean, I don't know. There's a guy who went 16-6, I think it was, but he played the objective a little bit more. So, anyways, guys, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. All right, peace.